Hey, greetings everybody, it's GleeCon, and I'm back with you once again with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On the last one, we ran through Darkshore with Shalasir. She cleaned up the beaches of some Murloc scum and some more beached up. We finally collected all the carcasses, and not really a lot, other than there seemed to be some ties possibly to the Naga, possibly to the old ones, and some connection between some of these things driving themselves mad, getting sick, and being huge, tied into the world tree that's been growth. So this is one thing without reading between the lines that I've never really, I didn't key into too much, was that I just assumed Darnassus and Teldrassil was this good area, and I didn't realize it is corrupt and kind of from the start, from the get-go. So I am curious as we read on, because I do know eventually, far down the line, Sylvanas burns it down. So I wonder if there's any connection between those two events, and does it kind of humanize Sylvanas a little more? Or what, did she just do it coincidentally and she's just an evil bee in that situation? I don't know. We'll find out. We did a couple other things, some questing, found some, all together it was mostly successful. I think we had about one death. We've also been reading the Alliance Player's Guide. We're now moving on to Chapter 7. So stay a while and listen as we kick off this. This is our second really longer book, or a chapter in the book that's really lore heavy, that we have to read it all. Once we get to chapters 8, 9, and 10, those chapters we will breeze through with just one episode per chapter. So this one's a little bit harder to chunk than the last one was. It's not quite as long, but it's not as clearly delineated. So I'm going to have to kind of sort of arbitrarily make my own chunks, and we're going to start with a decent sized one. So the chapter is called Alliance History and Current Situation, and the first chunk that we're going to do today is just called What's Up? What's up, guys? And here we go. It says each of the Alliance races has a rich history beyond the more recent unification the Alliance brought us. These histories are described in more detail elsewhere in the chapter we just read, but an overview of how their histories contributed to the Alliance seems in order. This is Bran Bronzebeard again. Hi, signing on. Okay, so the Ironforged Dwarves. My people have always been content to live within our mountains, inventing, studying, and mining. Few bothered us in the mountains, although we have had problems with ice trolls and wild beasts like Wendigo and Crocolisks. We allied with the gnomes and made the way safe for travelers between the south and the north. We handled most of our issues ourselves. Our inventions attracted the attentions of the humans, and we established a trade agreement, but little else. This ended after the humans' first war, with the orcs starting to attack from the south and the humans and elves offering help from the north. We would have been fools to refuse the alliance. Never hurts to have friends. Okay, and the Wildhammer Dwarves. The Wildhammer Dwarves were once our siblings and resided alongside us in Ironforge. Overpopulation and civil war drove them to found the fortress atop Grim Batal. Later attacks from the evil sorceress Dark Iron Dwarves toppled their city and polluted it with foul magic. They then settled atop Airy Peak, establishing a lasting community. They have an odd combination of a desire to stay autonomous and a readiness to help when an ally needs them. Technically, the Wildhammers aren't part of the Alliance. The Wildhammers used to be part of the Alliance back in the Second War, but aren't today. Those were the Griffin Riders we knew of. They are allies of the Alliance and friendly toward the Alliance, however. The Horde brought the Second War to the Wildhammers. The Horde marched all the way up Azeroth and attacked the Wildhammers. Then the High Elves appealed to the Wildhammers and convinced them to join the Alliance, which was, after all, fighting the Horde too. The Wildhammers sent Griffin Riders to help the Alliance in its fight against the Horde. Okay, Half-Elves. The Half-Elves never were considered a unified race apart from the Alliance. They were a byproduct of it, or at least a friendly alliance between High Elves and humans. Perhaps the only race that has actually received some benefit from the Third War. The Half-Elves have seen the historical prejudice against their mixed heritage wane in recent years. Since the destruction of Lordaeron reduced the population of the Alliance by huge numbers, each member is now considered needed regardless of parentage. There are few half-elves, as couplings between high elves and humans are rare. With what we know about night elves and their historical link to the high elves, we can only assume that the humans and night elves will be able to have children, but this hasn't happened yet to my knowledge. That'd be kind of cool to roleplay that. And High Elves, after their exile, the High Elves finally settled far north in Lordaeron. They brought the wonders of the arcane arts to our lands and altered the world to fit their needs. They founded the land of Quel'Thalas and did not bother themselves with the other races except for the occasional trolls that attacked. After some time, the trolls became more than the High Elves could handle, so they sent an emissary to the humans to ask for an alliance. The humans agreed to help fight the trolls, and the High Elves taught them magic to help them do so. To hear the High Elves tell it, they saved the humans from troll invasions and taught them magic out of the kindness of their hearts, but the storyteller always colors history. Yeah, that's true today. History belongs to the victor. The High Elves were not interested in fighting in the Second War, however, they joined the alliance because Lothar was the last descendant of the Arathi bloodline, and the elves were duty-bound to help him, as his ancestors had helped the elves against the trolls. And as we read, we also helped the elves out. We rescued some of their people, we rescued some rangers. Night Elves. The Night Elves, being the newest members of the alliance, lived posh, solitary lives in the western continent of Kalimdor, while the rest of us struggled with the Horde, the trolls, and the ogres in the east. They worried themselves with pretty much one concern: guarding the Well of Eternity from outsiders. Pretty big deal. Since their magic protected them well, this guarding consisted of half of their population napping for thousands of years in the Emerald Dream. Others guarded their dangerous prisoners, the wardens. I suppose that's one bad thing about immortality. Your society's criminals are also immortal. They awakened to the problems of the real world when the Third War brought the Burning Legion to their doorstep. Now they share their lives, their mortal lives, with the Horde, the Scourge, the remaining Burning Legion, and the Alliance. They chose to ally with us, and it has benefited the Alliance to have Kalimdor natives helping us out. Some Alliance members, I won't say who, take dark joy in watching the Night Elves attempt to adapt to their lives as mortals and as part of a larger group. I think it's interesting as we play through Classic 2, it's almost like the game intentionally alienates the Night Elves from the rest. Like, you have to be, you're sure your Alliance, but you're basically doing your own mission, doing your own thing. It is not, you're Kalimdor bound for the most part. Maybe far, far later you can figure out ways to sort of fly and hop and skip and take ships across the ocean, but no time soon. Like our girl Chalice here, she's gonna do Ashenvale. Then I have her moving over to Hillsbrad, which is weird. I don't know why I'm gonna have her make a jump over there. But then I have her back doing Thousand Needles, Destless, Dustwallow Swamp, Feralus, Fellwood, and then finishing up in the western and eastern hinterlands. Why would I not have her do Winter Spring? That's weird. Do I have a Winter Spring? Yeah, Nessingwary is going to move over there. All right, so I really didn't think about like the logistics of this. Yeah, why would I just not have her do Stone Talon too, or whatever? Anyway, she will, whatever. Take a jaunt over. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, gnomes. The gnomes were a decent, honest folk. Well, they still are. They just used to be a decent, honest folk with a home. They built the impressive, even to a dwarf Nomergon, into a mountain in Cosmodon. As dwarves and gnomes had much in common, a keen interest in engineering and a love of the mountains, the Ironforge dwarves were friendly with our neighbors. When we joined the Alliance, the gnomes came with us, offering their keen minds and nimble fingers. They were irreplaceable during the Second War. Unfortunately, the citizens of Nomergon had a power-mad traitor in their midst, and they lost their grand city when the Trogs infiltrated from below. We took the refugees in at Ironforge and other cities, and some reside in the east in Kalimdor and Bael'Modon. Okay, so like here would be an arbitrary breakpoint if we wanted, but I think this episode's been short enough that, and for the story perspective, we can kind of push forward with reading about the humans, because we've read about all the other races and they're just saying humans are the heart of the Alliance. So it would be jarring for me to stop and then come talk about the humans later. So let's get into them. The troll attacks on the nomadic human tribes around 3,000 years ago did something good for the humans in retrospect. The trolls' frequent raiding of the human tribes caused them to unite and form the first human nation, Erethdor. The humans proved to be a worthwhile force in that age, attracting the attention of the High Elves. The Arathi saw great potential in a friendship with the magic-using race and traded their support in return for tutelage and magic, but this was only a handshake of an agreement, nothing formal. It wasn't until centuries later, when the refugees from Stormwind arrived in Lordaeron bringing their tales of the Horde, that the humans saw the common sense in forming an alliance of their countries and with their neighbor races. It was not as simple as that, however. When the refugees arrived on the shores of Lordaeron fleeing the horrible Horde, King Tyrannus of Lordaeron called delegates from the 7 nations of humanity together to meet to discuss the threat. King Tyrannus took the refugees at their word about the danger in the south and agreed to join forces. The other 5 leaders were harder to convince. It amazes me when men become stubborn and refuse to see what is in front of their faces. As they were meeting, we Ironforged dwarves faced the Horde as it rampaged through our lands and knew we needed aid if we were to protect our homeland. The Horde also caught the attention of the High Elves and quelled the loss. Each of our races approached the humans to discuss the Horde and to eventually join the alliance. Most of the human countries, after much quarreling, finally agreed to unite for the betterment of the future. They called themselves the Alliance and put their armies under the control of Lothar, who had faced the Horde. They included all 7 of the human nations, some more grudgingly than others. Below, I endeavor to describe them to some degree. Oh, this is going to be neat. So there's the nation of Azeroth, which is what they called it in Warcraft 1. Azeroth, the shattered southern country, brought its resolute and angry refugees into the Alliance. Now under the rule of Regent Lord Anduin Lothar, these people once made up the mightiest of the human kingdoms. They mourned... They're not now made up, he's dead. They mourned their beloved King Lane, who died when Stormwing fell to the Horde, and they settled near South Shore, determined to take back their homes. So basically, you could call it the Kingdom of Stormwind now. Lordaeron. Lordaeron's King Tyrannus proved to be Azeroth's staunchest ally, calling a conclave of all human kingdoms to meet to discuss the fall of Azeroth. Its armies were the heart and backbone of the Alliance. They are no longer part of the Alliance, as that is now the Undercity and the seat of the Horde, of the Forsaken. Stromgarde. Lordaeron's opposite was Stromgarde. Its leader, Thoris Trollbane, led his kingdom with a strict martial philosophy. While Lordaeron brought the priests, Stromgarde brought the warriors. This kingdom borders Cosmodon and served as the first area of defense from land-based attacks for the humans. Stromgarde left the Alliance after the Second War, upset with certain political decisions. And I can't remember exactly what those are, but straight up, yeah, Stromgarde is essentially an evil faction now. They are hostile to all, so that's another thing that has left the Alliance. Kultiras. Admiral Dalen Proudmoore led the island kingdom of Kultiras. Kultiras was a naval and merchant country, and thus both rich and powerful. Proudmoore was an ally of Anduin Lothar, so he was Azeroth's second strongest patron. Dalen Proudmoore, also the father of Jaina Proudmoore, would later go on to terrorize the Horde on Kalimdor, souring relations between the Alliance and Horde. He would meet his death at the hands of Horde heroes, and in that process, they also defect from the Alliance, and they are gone until BFA. So what do we have? We have Classic, Burning Crusade, Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm, Mists of Pandaria, Warlords of Draenor, Legion. So for 7 straight expansions, 14 years of our time, and beyond, really, they're gone. But they do eventually come back into the fold and are now part of the Alliance again. Gilneas, Gen Greymane ruled Gilneas, the peninsula nation near Kultiras. Personally, I believe he's a selfish old fool who only aids the Alliance when it benefits him. He joined the Alliance in the Second War, but offered only token support. I wish I could say he met an end that befitted his egocentric life, but his coast is well fortified to this day, and a strong wall separates his peninsula from the rest of the continent. No one I know has seen the lands of Gilneas or the people of Gilneas since the wall was erected. As we now know, they are the Worgen, and they, as of Cataclysm, rejoined the fold as well. So they spent a few expansions out, but then came back. Dalaran. Dalaran was a nation populated by and run by Magi. The Kirin Tor ran the country as a conclave, their committee leading the Magi in an intellectual as well as political fashion. They were once a powerful nation, strong allies of the Alliance, trading considerable knowledge for the protection of the other nations. Dalaran's Archmagi were invaluable in the Second War. Later in the Third War, Arthas and Archimonde of the Burning Legion destroyed Dalaran. Currently, an impenetrable magical wall circles the area, and no one, not even other Alliance officials, knows what the surviving Magi are planning inside. But we do know that during Classic and possibly Burning Crusade, they are hostile. And we know by Wrath of the Lich King, they have removed themselves to Northrend and have become a neutral faction. So they're in there. In a way, they help the Alliance. but they also work with the Horde. They're straight up neutral. Alterac. Lord Aidan Perinold, perhaps the most notorious human noble of the Second War, was in charge of Alterac at the beginning of hostilities. Perinold was cowardly and his will weak. He betrayed the alliance, sending ships to strike at their vulnerabilities. Captured and ousted, now Lord Aidan Aladin, but it should be Aidan Perinold. Oh, it is Aladin Perinold. Aidan's son leads the Syndicate, a bandit group that includes Alterac's fallen nobles who seek to reclaim their kingdom. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We also know they're defunct. The Syndicate is a very weird, tiny footnote of a faction. There are almost no quests involving them. You can get exalted with them by doing something weird, very grindy, like it's a classic thing. I've never done it, but I may one day. I probably will one day go do it. I think it's just like killing a specific type of mob or something like that. But yeah, it's basically defunct. There, other than a small syndicate stronghold, there's nothing to do there. Let's read this side story. Frolweth Whiteshield tiptoed his great bulk through the foggy foul desert of the Blasted Lands. He wished he hadn't left his great ram Goldbar with the knights at Netherguard Keep, but he figured the mount was too good to accompany him on a suicide run. He didn't expect to be coming back from this journey. The scent of sulfur reached his nose, and he stopped. The sound of hooves caressing the ground rose to his ears, and he grinned. Squinting his one good eye up in the fog, he recognized Timanrog, the Pit Lord who had taken his eye in the Third War. "You returned on the day we had agreed upon. Wonderful," it rasped. One wing hung limp, scarred, and useless to the side. Whiteshield's gift to him. "Told you we'd end it." He raised his great axe. "You honor me with your continued wrath." The Pit Lord raised his own warblade in response. "Think what you like. I'm here for your head," Whiteshield said. His great axe glowed with the light of the silver hand, and he gave a mighty shout and plunged forward. The Pit Lord reared, striking with its front legs. Whiteshield knew this move. His fight with Timanrog had haunted his dreams for years. He ducked underneath the hooves and swung his axe upwards, slicing into the fiend's belly. It roared, and blood rained down on the dwarf. Although the blood burned where it touched his skin, Whiteshield smiled. "First blood, you bastard!" he cried, and aimed a crippling blow at the demon's front knees, even as it struck back at him, fell sword glowing. And that's a little flavor text for the Knights of the Silver Hand, which says, at the onset of the Second War, when the Alliance formed and began mustering its forces, several abbots openly wept as they realized that their pacifist priests would need to learn the arts of war. But Archbishop Alonsus Fowl saw an opportunity to unite the sword and the chalice to create a new breed of holy knights, paladins who were mighty with the hammer as well as the holy magic of the divine. He founded the Knights of the Silver Hand and began training paladins immediately. Uther was his first and greatest paladin. And since Classic has come along, dwarves enter the fray. By the time the Burning Crusade joins it, blood elves do as well, and then that kind of spreads. Now you can have all kinds of paladins. Tauren. I'm trying to think of some other. I recently added. I don't know. Maybe Worgen can be paladins now. I don't know. They can become monks. Anyway, there's a bunch. It's still one of the more restricted classes, but it's definitely added. They've added some. Okay, cool. So again, here we could stop, but I feel like we're in the middle of this human history. So let's continue with the Second War and times after. Like I said, my cutoff points are going to be arbitrary. Unlike the First War, which was quick and painful, the second one was more drawn out, reaching through Cosmodon and into Quel'Thalas. The Alliance, fortified with 7 human nations, 3 races, and a new breed of holy warrior, met the Horde with more confidence and pushed them back south to their stolen keep of Stormwind. The way the Orcs tell it, the turning point of the war was not when they fell back under the Alliance onslaught, but when the warlock Gul'dan took a good number of the Horde's forces and went to look for the tomb of Sargeras, an underwater crypt holding the remains of the great demon that the guardian of Teriswal Egwin had defeated years ago. He found the tomb and razed it, but demons poured from the stone edifice, killing Gul'dan and his followers. With the Horde diminished by treachery, they fell back to the Dark Portal, where most were captured after the portal was destroyed. Day of the Dragon. The Dragon Maw Orc clan remained strong after the Second War, living in the Wildhammer Dwarves' old fortress of Grimbatal. Their warlock Necros held the Queen of the Red Dragonflight Alexstrasza captive using an artifact called the Demon Soul. A reckless human mage by the name of Ronan led a force of humans and dwarves to Grimbatal to destroy the Demon Soul. When they freed the dragon, she decimated the Dragonclaw clan in vengeance. In the course of these adventures, the dragon Deathwing, once called Neltharion the Earth Warder, reappeared and clashed with the other dragon aspects. When the Demon Soul shattered, though, the other dragons grew in power and they routed Deathwing from the skies. That was the last time anyone saw Deathwing, though his children continued to scheme. And there was also a book about that we read on this channel. The Interim. What happened after the Second War was odd. The orcs seemed to diminish in the prison camps. Now, I'm not one overflowing with love for the green-skinned. Any prison can sap the will out of anyone. I should know. I visited a few, and booty-based prisons can really drain you of your will to live. But the orcs who were so fearsome and bloodthirsty in battle seemed to wilt like trees denied their water. I suppose many of us had assumed they would beat themselves against the walls of the camps until they died, and when that didn't happen, we of the Alliance had no idea what to do. We didn't really worry about it, however. As the years went on, we worked on rebuilding our lands as people do after a war. We did not know that a corrupted human mage, Kel'Thuzad, was communicating with the Lich King Ner'zhul and forming the Cult of the Damned. He commanded his followers to concoct a plague of undeath to spread through Lordaeron, and we did not discover his treachery until it was too late. The Third War. As the plague spread, so did rumors of orcs escaping the prison camps. Although the authorities feared a new horde uprising, none came, and our own undead became a greater threat to the Alliance settlements than the horde ever was. The Pride of Lordaeron, Paladin Prince Arthas, searched in vain for a cure for the plague. He lost his mind, even slaying sickened townspeople to stop the spread of the plague, for all the good that did. He betrayed his men and lost his soul in the northern continent of Northrend. He returned to Lordaeron, having sold his soul for power. He was an evil being, a Death Knight. He murdered his father and claimed Lordaeron for the Scourge. The Horde wisely stole ships and headed west. The Alliance attempted to fight the growing numbers of undead, but the plague had taken too many of us. We had no hope of victory fighting our own dead. Every time we lost a fighter, the enemy gained one. When Arthas and his followers let the demons of the Burning Legion into the world, we knew it was time to go. Like the Horde, we fled west. The Horde made fast friends with huge nomadic people called Tauren, as well as some trolls. What is it with the Horde and trolls? They made fast enemies with the Night Elves after they cut down some sacred trees and then killed one of their demigods in a following skirmish. I will get back into that, but they've also given us a timeline here. So, about 147,000 years-ish before the Dark Portal opened, our discoveries and our excavations of Baal Madan show that the beings we call the Titans arrived on Azeroth at this point. They created the dwarves called the Earthen. 64,001 years before it opened, the Titans departed, empowering the Dragonflights to care for the world and the Well of Eternity. Why they didn't charge the dwarves with this task is beyond my comprehension, but one doesn't question one's creators. Yeah, it is interesting, but maybe it's, as we read in Charge of the Dragonflight, I think they liked those dragons. They saw something in them. 9,999 years before it opened, Kaldorei, Malfurion Stormrage, Tyrande Whisperwind, and Illidan Stormrage, the demigod Cenarius, and the Dragonflights defeated the Burning Legion in the War of the Ancients. The war splits the continent in two, forming the maelstrom that plagues our seas to this day. 7,300 years before, the Night Elves banished the Highborn from Kalimdor, then closed their borders. We don't hear from them again for quite some time. 500 years ago, after that, 6,800 years before the portal, the Highborn settled in Lordaeron, the first elves to visit the continent since the battle with the demons. They settle in the north and call their new territory Quel'Thalas, and they change their name to High Elves. 4,000 years after that, 2,800 years before the portal, the humans build the nation of Arathor to unite against troll attacks. Humans and High Elves meet and become allies. 1,600 years later, 1,200 years before the portal, Arathor gets too populous, and internal strife causes it to break apart into 7 independent nations. Lordaeron in the north, Stormwind in the south, Kul Tiras an island to the west, Stromgarde north of Cosmodan, Alterac south of Lordaeron, Gilneas on the western peninsula, and Dalaran, the mage city south of Alterac. 230 years before it opened, the Civil War erupts in Ironforge with the Bronzebeard clan defeating the Wildhammer and Dark Iron Dwarves. The Wildhammer Dwarves settle on the mountain of Grim Batol. Later, the Dark Iron Dwarves attack Grim Batol and Ironforge at once, managing to destroy Grim Batol, but losing against the combined forces of Wildhammer and Ironforge Dwarves. The Wildhammer Dwarves settle on Airy Peak. Year 1, eager to conquer a new world and aided by corrupted Alliance Magi, the Orcs attack. The First War begins. Stormwind proves harder to take than they had thought, however, and the humans slaughter many Orcs in the first battle. Orc warlocks hide the Orc outpost from prying eyes, and the remaining Orcs reside there, healing and preparing for more battles. 4 years into it, the new war chief of the Horde, Orgrim Doomhammer, the one that you get to play as, lays siege to Stormwind. Under his lead, the Horde takes Stormwind Castle in a massive battle. A half-orc assassin kills King Lane. Doomhammer, having just destroyed the humans' pride and joy in the south, seems to retain enough compassion to understand that although sacking a kingdom is accepted, dabbling in dark magic is not. He captures Lane's assassin, who is loyal to the Warlocks, and tortures her into revealing their plans. Lord Anduin Lothar takes control of the Stormwind refugees, leading them north to Lordaeron. Thus the First War ends. A year later, Year 5, King Taranis of Lordaeron calls the other human kings together to discuss the Horde and Stormwind. Backed by Dalen Proudmoore of Kultiris, he moves that the humans unite to save the Stormwind people and remove the Horde from the land. Kultiris, Dalaran, and Alterac are agreeable, while Gilneas and Stromgarde are hesitant. The Orcs move north into Cosmodon, and the Ironforge Dwarves contact the humans for help. The Dwarves of Ironforge and their allies, the Gnomes, join the alliance. The High Elves, longtime allies of the human nations, add their bows and magic to the growing arsenal. The Wildhammer Dwarves, due to Horde aggression and High Elf appeal, also join. The human Archbishop Alonsus Fowl forms the Holy Warriors, the Knights of the Silver Hand. Some Ironforge Dwarves join the humans in training as paladins. A year later, Year 6, too soon after the previous war, the Horde advances north. They destroy much of Quel'Thalas. The Alliance manages to force them back to retreat to Stormwind. The Alliance's push continues and the Horde falls back to the mouth of the Dark Portal. Beloved Lord Anduin Lothar of Azeroth falls in the final battle. The Alliance destroys the Orcs' portal to Azeroth and imprisons most of the Orcs in camps held by Alliance forces. The Second War ends. A year later, Year 7, the Orcs reconstruct the Dark Portal and King Taranis fights the Horde on its own soil. He sends his greatest heroes, Khadgar, General Turalyon, High Elf Ranger Illyria, Wildhammer Dwarf Kurdran, and the human veteran Danath through the portal. The Warlock Ner'zhul opens several portals. The magic causes the Orcs' homeworld to rip apart. The heroes sacrifice themselves, closing the portal to Azeroth from Draenor, saving our land. We do not know if they survived, and if they did, where they are now. That's the Beyond the Dark Portal expansion. A year later, in Year 8, the human mage Ronan leads an attack on the last powerful free Orc clan, Dragonmaw. Ronan and his band break the control of the Orcs have over the Red Dragonflight, and the dragons do the rest of the Alliance's work for them. The book we read. 2 years later, Year 10, the Orc Warlock Ner'zhul, now imprisoned in ice as the Lich King, corrupts Archmage Kel'Thuzad of Dalaran. Kel'Thuzad forms the Cult of the Damned, maddened mortals who are obsessed with the undead, to aid him in creating a plague of undeath. 15 years later, the Third War begins, so a lot has been happening, mostly Prince Arthas growing up. Paladins are unable to cure the plague that sweeps through Lordaeron. Prince Arthas loses his soul and mind during a quest to find a cure, and is the dominating force behind the fall of Lordaeron and the slaying of his father, King Taranis, and the beloved paladin and his mentor, Uther Lightbringer. Alliance forces flee west, their hopes dashed with the fall of Lordaeron, Quel'Thalas, and Dalaran, and the coming of the Burning Legion. The presence of the Alliance and Horde alerts the Night Elves to strange movements. When Tyrande Whisperwind discovers the Burning Legion has returned, she awakens the sleeping Druids. In an unprecedented measure, the Night Elves, Alliance, and Horde unite to battle the demons atop Mount Hyjal. The Night Elves imbue the World Tree with their magic, giving back the immortality and power the Well of Eternity had gifted them. The magic destroys the demon forces. The Third War, the shortest but the most damaging of them all, comes to an end. The Night Elves, mortal, vulnerable, and no longer secret, join the Alliance. Jaina Proudmoore leads the Alliance far south, where they settle on a rocky island called Theramore. A year later, Year 26, the diminished Alliance loses more numbers as most surviving High Elves on Lordaeron secede and join the exiled Illidan. They call themselves the Blood Elves to remember their fallen kin and become Illidan's army. 3 years later, year 29, Dalen Proudmoore leads an assault on Durotar, failing miserably and leading the orcs back to Theramore. The Horde destroys Admiral Proudmoore and his troops and damages much of Theramore, but leaves it standing. By then, the expansion has ended to the Frozen Throne. And 1 year later is the present day. The truce between the Alliance and Horde is still intact, although some say it is in their leader's eyes only. Lordaeron is mostly an undead wasteland, with the Scourge and the Forsaken battling for control. Demons are still a very real threat in many places. Although many people are just trying to get along with their normal lives, they live with the shadow of death still on their doorstep. Whether their doorstep lies in Theramore, Durotar, Stormwind, or a tiny pocket of resistance in Lordaeron. Although we are not in open war, this is certainly not a time of peace. Okay, back to the longer, that was like a Cliff Notes version. We had fled our homes to survive. None of us had thought to regroup and fight again, but the demons and the Scourge followed us. The Night Elves determined they were aiming for a tree on top of one of their mountains, Nordrassil, the world tree that protected the Well of Eternity, one of the greatest sources of magic. The Alliance leader, Jaina Proudmoore, was tricked into a secret meeting with a man we now know to be Medivh, the mage who opened the Dark Portal in the first place, and Thrall, the new chief of the Horde. In an unprecedented move, the two leaders agreed to a truce to remove the demons from the world. Our combined armies made a valiant stand at the World Tree. The Night Elves proved a powerful race, even if they had been hiding in shadows and fog for the past several thousand years. The Alliance made a strong stand as well, and even I had to take my helmet off in respect to the Horde warriors who died. They were not wilted anymore, and still fought with barbarian-like rage, but they seemed more focused and less bestial. Whatever Thrall had done for them upon their escape, it was to their benefit. Even with the three armies, we were not enough. The demons converged on the World Tree, intent on draining its energies and breaking apart what was left of our world. Then the Night Elves made the ultimate sacrifice, channeling their power and immortality into the tree itself. The sudden rush of power destroyed the demon lord Archimonde. And the aftermath. With the end of the war came the settling. The Horde established a homeland for the first time since their arrival to our world. Their allies settled around them, making a large area of land dedicated to the Horde. The Night Elves remained in their forests, part of the Alliance, but hesitant to have Alliance travelers visit them. The rest of us, we settled in the south on Theramore Island. The tiny walled city housed clues to our makers, the Titans. Humans stayed mostly on Theramore, and the gnomes are welcome wherever Ironforged dwarves are. Half-elves are welcome everywhere and nowhere as usual. Proudmoore's invasion. Life was just getting back to a semblance of order when Jaina Proudmoore's father, Dalen, hero of the Second War, brought a fleet from Lordaeron and violated our truce, attacking the orc nation of Durotar. The orcs struck back at Theramore, which Dalen had commandeered. Theramore was left in flames, but still standing as the orcs retreated after the admiral's death. And the current times. Lordaeron stays under the control of the undead, where a civil war brews between the Scourge and a faction of free undead, the Forsaken, who are free from Arthas' control. Azeroth remains somewhat the same, only with demons roaming the southeastern portion. Cosmodon is still the strong nation it once was, but with only trogs, maddened gnomes, and ice trolls to concern us. The Night Elves worry about one of their own, Illidan, who betrayed their trust and became part demon for more power. He now leads an army of Naga and Blood Elves in Outland, the shattered orc homeworld. And the former Prince Arthas? He took the mantle of his former master, the Lich King, and crowned himself, becoming the strongest being in the world. Alright, so here is a good stopping point. We will move on to the State of the Alliance, which technically takes up the rest of the chapter, but it's about 3 times as long as what we just read, so we're going to have to break it up even into further chunks. But we'll do that next time. For now, we got another episode in the pipe, 5x5. Thank you everyone so much for watching and for listening, and I will see you all next time on Lore of Warcraft.